Fantastic. So where are you joining us from?
From home in Harris.
In Harris.
On the east side of Harris, yeah.
Yeah, Outer Hebrides, which is next to Lewis. Tell me something. Why is Lewis and Harris different places? Do you know?
I have read it up, and I can never remember the actual real reason. It's something to do with clans or something.
Yeah, it's a clan.
It's the two. It's a lot of people think it's two separate islands. It's actually one landmass, and Harris is the bottom bit, and Lewis is the larger top bit.
Yeah, I think the Clan MacLeod had something to do with that.
Something like that,
yeah. So to the audience who've joined us, feel free to post your comments and questions as we go along. I'm going to change the format a little bit tonight, because we're going to commence with a short digital work that John has produced, and it's called An Alternative View of the Outer Hebrides. And this is its world premiere, I suppose. And within that, John provides his own introduction. So we're going to run with that, which is maybe several minutes long, and then we'll go into some further chat.
My name's John Maher. I was born and brought up in Manchester. Here's a couple of photos of me with mum and dad when I was about 3 years old. When I was 16, just after around my 16th birthday, got a second-hand drum kit. I ended up joining a punk rock band called Buzzcocks. After the band split in 1981, I drifted into another one of my interests, which was building and racing high-performance air-cooled Volkswagens. I used to race the red car and the green car that you can see in the pictures here. And in 2002, I moved the business up to the Isle of Harris. And about 2009, I got very seriously into photography, making use of the lack of light pollution up here to produce some of the images which I'm about to show you. And this first selection of photographs were all taken under the light of a full moon, and the exposure times lasting several minutes. This particular one's a little fishing boat that was just stuck on the jetty just down the road from our house. This is an old 1957 Albion truck that used to belong to a tweed mill in Stornoway that had been abandoned at the side of the road. And this used to be known locally as the magic phone box, because when you put your 10p in the slot, the phone call, you'd never be cut off. It'd just go on for as long as you wanted. This is the road home. I called it that because I was literally on the way home after a long night out shooting under the full moon, and got the idea to just walk along the road shining my torch on the road surface all the way down to that bend in the distance. The next three photos were all taken in Ness, which is at the top end of the Isle of Lewis. And here's the little cute Ness post office. This was taken in January 2011, shortly after midnight. One of the many shearlings out on the moor in Ness. There's a variety of constructions, but they're all based on a familiar theme. There's one open space with a stone gable end, so there's a fire in there to keep the place warm. Many of them are in various states of disrepair, but also some are still used to this day. And here's Ness's most famous landmark. That's the Butt of Lewis Lighthouse. famously made of brick, and one of the few lighthouses that isn't painted. And here are 3 night photos where I've not actually added any additional light. I've just let nature take its course with these. And the first is what's known as Northton Temple on the Isle of Harris, and this is just a long exposure. The orange glow over to the right is the street lights in the village of Northton. Here's an unexpected visitor. A decommissioned oil rig washed up on the west side of Lewis in August 2016. So this was a late night trek across the cliff top path to get access to the rig, as the police had closed the roads. Don't get many opportunities to take a picture like this on the islands. This is rush hour in Stornoway, and we're looking at the Anlanta Gallery, which is the place where my first main exhibition took place. So more about that in the next section. When I was doing my night photography, occasionally I'd go inside some of the old abandoned houses that I was photographing, usually to light the interior. And this is when I started noticing that some of them had quite a lot of personal possessions and furniture and so on left behind. So I started going back in daylight hours to photograph this, and the next series of images is from Nobody's Home. This photograph gave me the title for the exhibition. I took this back in 2010. It's on the Isle of Lewis. And the thing that drew me to it when I first saw it straight away was it just reminded me of the houses that I used to draw when I was at primary school, with the red door bang in the middle, windows either side, just the symmetry of it and the simplicity. I often saw some very brightly coloured interiors, like this yellow painted V-lining in the house on the bays of Harris, along with a clock that I subsequently learned was quite a popular model from the local hardware shop in Tarbert in the 1970s. This is the mystery of the house with the TV set. Long after I'd taken this photograph, I met a member of the family who informed me that the house never actually had any electricity, so why this vintage TV set was in there, I've no idea. Here I'm looking into one of the upstairs bedrooms of Ensay House, which is the only house on the little island of Ensay in the Sound of Harris, and it was quite a grand house in its day. You can see the bell on the wall there to summon the servants from quarters down below. It's not actually been occupied full time for a long time now. I stumbled across this by accident one night. It was during the Muir burn season, where they set fire to the heather to encourage new growth and so on, and occasionally it gets a little bit out of hand, and it was just the reflection in the lock there just made for a photo opportunity that I couldn't resist. The next 5 images were all shot using a large format film camera from the 1960s, and I wanted to get that large 4" by 5" negative to produce incredibly detailed large size prints for the exhibition. And this is the house that I showed you earlier, the one with the TV set inside. And there's a very common sight in a lot of Hebridean homes. It's the classic Rayburn, which was really the focal point of the home, I suppose, because it provided heat, you cooked your food there, and it also provided you with hot water. See these everywhere. This room has just got so much in it. That amazing blue chair, the ornate mirror above the mantelpiece, and then all various ornaments, and there was even a birthday card on the mantelpiece as well. went back to visit this house in North Uist about 18 months after I'd taken the photograph you see here, with a TV crew from the BBC. But as we approached the house, it was obvious the roof had completely collapsed in, but went up, tried to get in, and could barely push the door open. Everything completely buried underneath timbers and slates and so on. So this possibly could be the last photograph that was ever taken of that room. And yeah, spot the sheep carcass in the corner. I like the blue flaking paint on the door, and the fact that the wood effect wallpaper is also peeling away to reveal the real wood hiding behind it. And to round things off, here's a look at some more recent work of mine. This is a series of portraits, part of an ongoing project where I'm featuring people who live and work on the island. And in a funny sort of way, I see this as a bit of a carry-on from the abandoned houses, really, because although those pictures don't feature any actual people, I felt that that it is very much about the people who used to live there, and then taking that forward, let's feature some of the people who do live and work here today, just paying tribute really to the people who might be an ordinary job, some people might refer to them as that, but in an extraordinary place, and the images hopefully are trying to convey that.
Thank you very much, John. That's a very moving piece of work. So there's a whole number of the images from Nobody's Home, of the abandoned crofts, as well as other shots with the stunning landscape of the Outer Hebrides in the background on show at the moment. I think about 22 of the images are on display in various windows in the town of Rothesay on the Isle of Bute. So that was about bringing imagery from the outer islands to the inner island of Bute. Nice little touch. So that's on for another couple of weeks. So if people want to get down to Weems Bay, catch the ferry, you'll be able to see that. I was lucky enough to see the exhibition at Ann Lantern 2013, John, right at the tail end. I think it might have been about the 30th when I got up to Stornoway to see it. It was then subsequently shown in 2016 at the Lighthouse in Glasgow, more recently in Ness. So regarding the Rothesay show, you can download all the names and the places of the businesses that the work is on show, and thanks to all of those places for participating. So sorry to go on for too long. Now that audio-visual work, is brilliant, and a much earlier version of that was included on Scotland's mobile cinema, the Screen Machine, wasn't it? That must have been about 3.5 years ago.
Yeah, it probably must be at least that long ago. And it was yourself that invited me to put something together for that. So I gather what the Screen Machine wanted to do was have a way of displaying local artists as the mobile cinema toured around, doing its tour around the islands as it did at the time. And it's kind of getting back to doing it again now, dealing with the COVID stuff. And it was a tester, wasn't it? They wanted to see how that kind of thing went down, because I went along to the screening when they came to Tarbert in Harris and did a little brief presentation before they showed that. But actually, it was a much more basic version of what you've just seen, because the feedback forms that they got following the showing were very positive. So they decided at that point, yes, we will continue. And I know yourselves were involved in then bringing other photographers and artists in to do little presentations that did then subsequently go on tour with the Screen Machine again. And then, a few years later, I was invited to, well, when I watched back the subsequent ones, I could see they were a lot more, getting a little bit more sophisticated and had narration and a soundtrack, whereas mine was just really not much more than a slideshow. So I then, taking a hint from the other people that you got involved, went back and tried to, pep the thing up a bit, and that's what you've just seen now.
Yeah, it did kickstart rather, the partnership with the Screen Machine, which is run by Regional Screen Scotland. And it takes films to remote places in the Highlands and Islands of Scotland, places that are not served by cinemas or other cultural provisions. So it's a very, very good thing. And it's a great way of showing photography in these short works where you're taking photography to the full screen and you're hearing the photographer or the artist speaking about them. It's very impactful. So thank you for getting that underway, in actual fact. And
thanks for inviting me to be the guinea pig.
Yeah. And you photographed the Screen Machine as well, because an image did appear towards the end of that presentation. It's literally a big, large blue truck that parks and expands into an 80-seat cinema. Quite state of the art.
It's an incredible bit of kit, because I've been on the Screen Machine many a time before I ever got involved with doing, working with them. Pretty much not every time they come to the island, but many a time been on there. In fact, the first time we ever went on the Screen Machine was, I think we were just moved up, and it wasn't coming to Harris for some reason. It was in Benbecula, and myself and my wife Helen, we actually booked a hotel. We stayed in the hotel where it was parked outside the Craigory Hotel in Benbecula, or South. It's in the Uist, and we made it like a 2-day thing, just so that we could go on the mobile cinema. And the fantastic thing about it is that once you're on there and the film starts, you totally forget that you're basically sitting in the back of a truck, because it's like one of those little. Reminds me of those cinemas I used to go to in Manchester, where they divided a place up into, there'd be about 7 screens, and they were quite small, albeit they can see 80 people. It's a brilliant piece of kit.
Yeah. And just a wee note from Joanna Smith, who says that she saw the exhibition 2015 in Cumbria, and I forgot to mention that. You did have a show down across the border.
Yeah, Farfield Mills, I think.
Yeah. Why don't you show us a few of those images, John, if you can, and tell us a bit more about the processes, both technically and your thinking behind them. Yeah.
Okay. The first one we've got lined up, I called it the Harris Tweed truck. I've done these kind of sort of chronologically. Because it explains the way my photography's gone, I guess. So have we got that picture?
Yeah, that's up, John. Yeah.
Is it? Oh, sorry. Right.
Yeah.
I must be looking at the wrong screen then. So let me just. Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. Right. An interesting thing, getting involved in photography and going around exploring the island. It's just been an amazing way to learn a lot of stuff about the history of the island and just some of the stuff that goes on. So anyway, this somebody sent me a picture of this the day it was delivered to Stornoway. It came in on the ferry, which was pre-roll on, roll off. So there's a fantastic photograph of this thing being suspended and hoisted onto the quayside at Stornoway. brand new as it was then, and it was for the Kenneth Mackenzie Tweed Mill. I gather it used to travel around the island delivering yarn to the various weavers, and then when they woven that into cloth, they would come and collect it. Now, when we first moved up here, this would be back in 2002, I noticed this. It was kind of parked in a field at the side of the road near the Lewis Harris border. I don't know how long it had been there. I think it got abandoned sometime in the 70s, just sat by the side of the road. And then I sort of always caught my eye. And then once I got into the photography thing, I thought it was a definite target to go and do. And this is very late at night. It's probably 12, midnight, 1 in the morning. And I was basically using, obviously lit it in the inside with a red light, and then the side of it is, you can see the side, you see the shadow coming there. So that whole side of the bus was in shadow. So I painted light on there with a torch just to lift that up out of the shadows. And this is how, one of the ways that I learned an awful lot about how you can use light to enhance the image and give it more of a three-dimensional look. But also, more importantly, it was a way for me to view Harris in a way that I had never seen it presented before. And the next image, similar kind of thing. We showed this was in the slideshow as well. I did mention the fact that once upon a time that the coin mechanism was faulty and you just stuck 10p and it went on for hours and hours, as long as you wanted to. And that's just a couple of miles away from where I am right now. The phone box is still there. And again, long exposure, probably about 4 or 5 minutes. You can probably tell that by the length of the star trails. That's how much the earth had moved during the time my shutter was open. And then using my torch to paint light around, I created the internal light as well that makes it look like the telephone logos are lit up. The light in there was actually broken, so I had to go in there during the shot and do that. And then the next picture is what they call a shieling, which is, I'd never heard the word before I moved up here. It's basically like a very basic accommodation, usually out on the moor. It might be because the family used to go out there in the summer months to look after the cattle or dig peat or whatever. And there's a particular area in Ness where there's a whole string of these right out across the moor. You sort of walk along, find one. I'd set up to photograph this. Again, it's a late night shot, long exposure, obviously lit it internally. And while my lighting might only take me less than 2 minutes and the exposure would be 6 minutes. So while I was biding time for 4 minutes, I'd be staring around, my eyes having acclimatized to the darkness by now. And I would see another one off over the brow of the hill. So I'd say, right, as soon as I've got this shot in the bag, I'd pack everything up and trek off over to the next one. And the night that I took this, I did about 6 or 7, and I was out there for probably 3-4 hours, off literally out in the middle of nowhere. Next one is on Harris. That's the old Scarrister post office. The building is still there, but it's no longer used as a post office. And there's just, I don't know, it's yet another red telephone box. I think there's something that appeals to me about these things. And in fact, the light in there, that is its own light. Only light I added during this exposure was on the front of the building, so that you could actually, it'd show up the Scarrister post office sign. The rest of it is just left to nature and probably 2 or 3 minutes exposure. So we go to the next one, which is an oil rig that was being towed. I think ultimately was on its way over to Turkey to be broken up. It had been decommissioned, but it was extremely rough weather when the tug that was towing the thing had to explode the bolt on the tow rope or tow line, because it was just the boat was in severe danger of getting sunk otherwise, and so it was set off to drift and ended up early hours one morning in Dalmore up on the Isle of Lewis, because it made the news headlines not only around the island but elsewhere. And as soon as I heard about it, I thought that's definitely a target for a nighttime shot. I've seen lots of people photographing it, obviously during the daylight hours, but I thought it would be a fantastic subject for a long exposure night shot. But it did involve, as I mentioned in the video, it did involve, I think it was about 2 to 3 mile trek in the dark across the cliff tops. Had 2 accomplices who wanted to come on a little adventure with me, and we tried to go the short way, but there was a police car at the top of the road not allowing anybody down, so we'd come so far for this, we just had to go and do it the hard way. But I just really like the result of that. In fact, after I did post that picture on Facebook, and within about 2 minutes of having put it on there, I was getting messages from a crew of guys who were actually on the rig, sorting stuff out, getting ready for its reflotation, which is quite weird. Okay, the next one of this clock. This is pretty much probably the start of when I started doing the interior photographs. This particular house, which is on the Bays of Harris, a few miles away from me, house had sat empty for a long, long time. But again, another one of those where there were lots of personal belongings and effects, furniture, things that had been left behind. And I'd taken photographs of the exterior of the house before, but for some reason this particular night I thought, well, the door was open. I must point out, I've never broken into any of these houses. It's just, the doors typically they've fallen off or they're halfway open or whatever. So I wandered in and I was shining my torch around to see what was in there, and that was when I thought, this is amazing. I've got to come back in daylight hours and see what I can do. And that was, again, I mentioned this in the vid about the exteriors of the houses often look quite drab, kind of greyish, dull, but often amazed by the brightness of the colours inside. This room, obviously yellow, it had a matching yellow Rayburn stove. And then another room in the house was bright pink walls. So, the interiors definitely don't reflect the drabness and dourness of the exteriors in many cases. And the next one is, again, this is, obviously an interior. I have to mention, you'll probably remember this, Malcolm, that that first exhibition that you came along to at Atlanta back at the very end of 2013, it was a joint exhibition with a guy called Ian Patterson, who from Fife. It was actually Ian's idea. He contacted me because he'd seen my work, and he had been photographing similar stuff, and he got in touch and we got on really well, and it was actually his idea to approach Atlanta with a view to exhibiting the work. So to give a big thumbs up to Ian for instigating that. And it was also Ian had a shot, he'd photographed this room with the TV in, and of course when I was looking at his images I spotted this one, and to me it just really stood out, and I was saying to him, well, you've got to tell me where this house is. And it's actually over in the Isle of Scalpy. And of course I went and did my version of this room with the TV in, and the strange thing was meeting I think it was a nephew of the woman who used to live in the house, and I'd asked him if he'd seen this picture, and he didn't know anything about it. I explained it to him and mentioned the TV, and then he's kind of stroking his chin and says, well, that's weird. His auntie never had electricity, and I had never had electricity in the house ever. So the TV thing's a bit of a mystery. And the next one is, I call this bedroom and chapel because obviously we're looking into the bedroom, and that is actually a little chapel that you can see outside the window. And this is on the Isle of Ensay, which is quite a small uninhabited island, about I don't know, it might be 2 miles off the bottom end of Harris, in the Sound of Harris. And this quite grand in its day house had servants' quarters. I believe it was a house for the guy who did all the dirty work for the owner of the island at the time. I can't remember the names of the people, but it was. I got this opportunity to go over there. I was on the island only for about 3 hours, and did have access to the house. And it's just a fantastic example of kind of faded grandeur. It's quite different in that way to all the other houses that are photographed as part of the Nobody's Home exhibition. Like the thing on the left there on the wall, that was that would wind that, and that would ring a bell to summon a servant. In fact, I don't know if she's tuned into this. A woman called Victoria Dowd contacted me. This must be couple of years ago, maybe 2-3 years ago, and she'd seen the photos, and she said that they actually inspired her to as a setting for a murder mystery that she wrote. So maybe if she is listening, she might chip in on the comments on the Facebook feed. Okay, so the next one I called The Dog, the Cat and the Bird. If you can pull that one up, please. Yeah, that's it. I should mention that once Anne Lanter said that they were prepared to exhibit these photos, because I'm familiar with Anne Lanter and I've seen many exhibitions in there. And when I saw some, a photo exhibition in particular, if there were very large prints, I'm talking, probably a couple of meters wide or a couple of meters tall, the impact that they had, assuming it was a good quality photo at that size, is, if you've seen stuff like that, you'll know that it's far more impactful than a 12 by 8 in a frame. And so I was determined that for that exhibition, I wanted to present some very large, high quality prints. And to that end, I ended up going down this route of purchased a second-hand large format film camera using 4" by 5" negatives, and went through a whole learning curve of how to, won't bore you with all the technical details, but any of the photographers out there, you probably know about the zone system, and it was a whole new learning curve for me, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And most importantly, I thought the results I got from shooting on film and then having those scanned at very high resolution, the end results are just incredible. It was a real eye-opener that film has the potential to capture so much detail and quality in it, in a world where we make the assumption that digital rules the roost. So I think the next few are actually all shot on the large format camera, including this one, which was a house over in North Uist that I spotted one day as I was driving along. And it was not by the side of the road. It was at least a quarter of a mile, maybe half a mile walk across, not easy to walk on terrain to get to it. And I went there with my digital camera, peeked inside, because again, it wasn't locked. Animals had obviously got in there. You can see that sheep carcass over by the far wall underneath the window. I did my digital shots in there. This was prior to Anne Lanter saying that they wanted us to do the exhibition. As soon as we got the thumbs up from Anne Lanter, I thought, as far as making a very large print, this scene to me was the one that would really justify it. So I actually went back with the large format camera and shot this, again, not too techie detail, but I actually used 2 sheets of film and used the movements on the camera in order to be able to splice those images together to create what in the end was about it was getting on for 8 foot wide, this print, and the detail in the print, I probably can't see it on the screen, but there's a cobweb running from the door handle on that green door down towards that sheep carcass, and on that cobweb you can see the body of a spider, and that actually shows up on the large scale print. So again, the experience of and the learning process with the large format thing, this, to me, this justified all the effort of that. And again, the next one, again shot on the large format film, and it's just a tiny little house, not too far away from where I am now, actually demolished now. And I think that's another factor with this, is that in fact the picture I showed you before, that green room with the sheep carcass, that house is all collapsed in. This one is actually not even there anymore. There's no trace of its existence at all. So I think it's useful to have documented these, so that at least there's some record of that, yeah, they were there. And the large format film, again, this was about 6 foot tall. I had this printed at, and yeah, you can see all the cracks in the paint, and just a great way of recording decay being allowed to happen over a long period of time, just naturally. That's part of the appeal to me. So if we switch on to the next one, we moved away completely now from the Nobody's Home stuff. This is, I touched on it in the video, a sort of ongoing project of photographing people who live and work on the island. And this was, I think this was the very first one. I had the idea in my head for quite some time, and then it's just the fact of how do I initiate it. And I saw the mobile bank come down to Leverborough, as it normally does on a Tuesday, and I just thought, this is the time to get the ball rolling. I'll just have to go and ask them. They might not agree to it, but actually, as you can see, there were more than willing participants. And I use this is the way I shoot these, is there's about probably 10 exposures taken in this. Roddy, the driver, and Jessica, who's there in the van, just in the one shot. And then I got them to step aside while I then took multiple other shots, but using my light from different angles. And then through the magic of layering these up, I can selectively choose which bits of each image I want to put on to create this effect of almost as if it was shot in a oneer, it would have to have taken about 8 or 9 different lighting setups and a team of people to hold them from getting blown over in the wind. And this is my low budget one-man band way of trying to create that kind of impact with the image. And yeah, the next one, it doesn't quite fit into this series, but it's done with exactly the same techniques. And it was when the BBC contacted me. They wanted to do a piece in a documentary they were making with Billy Connolly. And they wanted me to photograph him somewhere. They suggested one of the old abandoned houses, and I said, well, I'm kind of doing different things now. How about if we take him to this bus stop where that Santa has lived in that bus stop for about the past 7 or 8 years. And I thought they just think it was too stupid an idea, but they were game for it. And yeah, we sat Billy on the chair. I wandered around doing my lighting thing, and as it happens, the sequence that they filmed, it got chopped out of the program because some bigwig at the BBC decided that the program would benefit from having various talking heads telling us stuff that we already know, and that got the chop. Survived the title sequence but didn't appear in the program. Okay, next one. I'm not quite sure why I chose to chuck this in. I think this is just one of those kind of oddball Hebridean scenes that appeals to me. It's way up in Point, in top end of Point in the Isle of Lewis, and I was just driving around one day just for the sake of it, and then I spotted this Trabant just abandoned in pretty much in the middle of nowhere. And just, you know, kind of get these stories coming to my head about, you know, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, this Trabant has progressed its way and ended up at the top end of Lewis and just got dumped in a field. And I did, when I first posted it on my Facebook page, I concocted this stupid story about how Bono and the Edge had, because I don't know if some people I'm sure will know this, that they got a load of Trabants. So they did a world tour, and part of the stage set was a whole, they had I don't know, they must have had 20, 30, maybe more Trabants involved in the stage set. And I just had this vision of Bono and the Edge after the tour, taking a break and coming over to the Outer Hebrides, and the car broke down while they were house hunting. And the thing is, there was people who actually believed it, you know. So yeah, that's my sick sense of humor. So this is the next one, is the last one in this little list that I've picked, and this is actually one of my personal favorites. This is over on the island of Vatersay, which is connected by causeway to Barra. And I mentioned Ian Patterson earlier. When Ian, the very first email that Ian sent to me was he'd taken a picture of this, and he was actually suggesting that this would suit my kind of lighting treatment. So I'd always kept that in mind. So I thought the first time I'm actually down there and I get the opportunity to go and photograph this, that's exactly what I wanted to do. And I had in my head the idea that I wanted to try and make this look like the lights were on inside the house, which is obviously ridiculous because there's only the two gable ends, but that was the theory behind the way that I've lit this. And once I got that idea and set about doing it and getting that composition with them poking above the you know, the horizon, and it just is a personal favorite. I like the little. It means a lot because of, like, Ian suggested it, what happened since Ian's suggestion of getting the exhibition together, and then actually going down there and getting the shot. So that's good. Yeah, that's my little pick list. So if anybody wants to ask any questions on any of that, fire away.
Great shout out for Ian there, John. Thank you for that. Gordon Baxter reminds us that you can buy prints from yourself from your website, and if my colleague John, who's behind the scenes there, can share that at some point, that would be great. But Gordon did also say that these large prints are quite stunning to see in the flesh, and certainly they are. Now, Louise Marguerite Reed, bonsoir, Lou, asks, what inspired you to take up photography after the racy days of punk and racing cars? What was it?
Well, I was actually kind of into photography for a long time. What prompted me to buy my very first camera was when Buzzcocks' first tour of America, that was in 1979. So I was 19 years old, and I was brought up on I kind of got into cinema, so I was going to see things, you know, like Taxi Driver, Mean Streets, Dog Day Afternoon, those kind of films, and very familiar with the imagery of America through watching, sitting in the house and watching the episodes of Kojak with my dad, you know, that kind of stuff. And so the prospect of actually going over to America, I wanted to capture some of that. So obvious way to do that was with a camera. So I bought the cheap little Olympus Trip and just recently unearthed all the negatives from them and scanned them. I've put them up on a whole bunch of them are up on my website. And again, it's really interesting looking back at that's only like 35mm film on what amounted to a point and shoot camera. But when I scan these myself digitally, the quality that's in some of those images is fantastic. And when you bear in mind, those negatives have been sat in a cupboard, in a the cliche shoebox in the cupboard for over 40 years, and you just pull them out, scan them, and it's like, hey, it's amazing how they come out. So yeah, so I'll try and always had an interest, but never got into it really, really seriously like as far as work, all that f-stop and apertures and all that kind of thing, until 2009. And it was seeing some night photographs that a guy in America called Troy Paver had taken. And to be honest, when he was like those first images I showed, the earlier ones, like the Harris tweed truck with the red light inside, that's the kind of stuff he was doing, but in California desert locations. And I thought, I just absolutely entranced by the images. And I thought, I've got to give that a go. So I went out and started learning, how do you do it? And it's a fantastic way of forcing you to learn. You can't work your camera on auto mode doing that kind of thing because it doesn't work. So I had to, it was in the deep end. It was a fantastic way to learn how a camera works and how you can manipulate the settings to achieve a given result.
Yeah, okay. And there's an image that springs to mind actually of you standing alongside Debbie Harry. You were taking photographs yourself when you were on tour, weren't you?
Yeah, well, weirdly enough, I didn't have a camera with me on that tour. That was in Europe. 78. See, I remember it well. No, that picture was actually taken by our tour manager, Pete Monks. He always was carrying a camera around with him. And of course, back in the day, I mean, that tour was just when their album Parallel Lines came out. Heart of Glass was about to come out as a single. It was before that, basically just before they went mega. And I was a massive Blondie fan. As much for the drumming of Clem Burke as for Debbie Harry, and I loved them both. But Clem Burke was a massive drumming inspiration to me. So it was just incredible to actually. We only did 4 dates with them, but we were out in Europe. I was 18. I had a poster of Debbie Harry on my back of my bedroom door in my parents' house. Late 76, and then less than 2 years later we were out doing the same, doing touring with them. Brilliant.
Yeah, great. We'll come back to music before we wind up fairly shortly, but just to mention a few other comments here. Jacqueline White says, love the Scarista post office shot. My friend Margaret lives just up the road from there and was good friends with the owners. There was another one, Gordon Baxter again said that he's seen the exhibition in Edinburgh. Now that exhibition in Edinburgh, John, was related to a shelter project, wasn't it? And just very briefly, there was a lot of media attention round about Nobody's Home. And with the help of Shelter, it led to the Western Isles Council creating a new post of empty homes officer in 2018, is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. You couldn't take credit for, actually creating a new job, but there was certainly, as you say, there was a lot of media attention about it and the plight of, so many abandoned houses. Shelter actually invited me down to their annual conference one year to deliver they call it a keynote speech. Basically did a presentation, a bit like we're doing here. And I think they liked it because it's just another way of attracting attention to the cause. And as you pointed out to me the other day, they've had the involvement like that before with photography through the very famous series of photos by Nick Hedges, which people still see them posted on Twitter sort of very regularly. So it's good if the no intention of the photos being used for those purposes. I was just going out doing it because I felt some sort of drive to go out and take pictures, and then it just escalates into something else completely.
Yeah. Okay. There's lots of other comments coming in, John. So after we close shortly, you can go back and have a look at them, and should you feel that you wish to answer any of them, please do so. Okay. But regarding the music, you moved to Harris. I suppose the noise of the drumming or the revving up of the Volkswagens be much quieter place in Harris. Yeah, have you got a room where you've got your drum kit?
I have, yeah. In fact, I was having a blast on it this afternoon before I came back to do this. It's just nice that every so often you just, if you feel the urge, I can go and make an absolute racket.
Yeah.
So yeah, I still keep my hand in.
Yeah, fantastic. But to go back to Spiral Scratch, of course, I mean, the Sex Pistols is often talked about as being the moment when they played the lesser Free Trade Hall in Manchester. The first one was supported by a heavy metal band. Buzzcocks at the time were not quite ready.
That's right.
6 months later, you were.
Well, it was much sooner than that. The first gig was in June '76. That's when Howard and Pete Shelley hadn't actually, I didn't know them then. And it was a few days after that first gig that Howard called round to my house and said, come along for a rehearsal on Saturday. So that's going from early June to the first gig we did with the Pistols was July 20th. So you're only talking about 6 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. And you say that you still keep your hand in between now and back then. You've played with other bands as well, and the much mysterious and underrated Invisible Girls you played with, who played all the backing music for Pauline Murray's first solo LP after the demise of Penetration. Who were the Invisible Girls?
Well, the Invisible Girls was a kind of concoction by Martin Hanna and this keyboard player, Steve. God, I'm getting old now. He's Steve. He'll come to me. I'll blurt it out. And then they get these random people in, like, oh, we need a bass player, and they'd get someone or whatever. So this sort of Invisible Girls was a floating thing of people. And then when Pauline got the idea for the solo album, she was obviously working with Rob, who was the original bass player from Penetration. Still, Pauline and Rob have been partners for a long, long time, and still very good friends of mine. They decided to work with Martin, and so wow, I can't remember. I think Pauline and Rob invited me to play with them on that album, and actually went out and toured it as well. We did the UK and Europe tour with it around the time it came out, which I think does it go back to about 1980, I think.
Yeah,
it's around about then.
Yeah, 1980. But you also,
in fact, they're touring. They're going out with it again. They're going to support the Psychedelic Furs. I think it's October. And Pauline and the Invisible Girls are supporting. I'm not part of it this time, but they're going to be playing tracks from that album on that tour.
Yeah, yeah. And you played drums on the fairly of recent years new Penetration album and toured with them. And that wasn't retro, that was all new material, really fantastic, fantastic album. And I was lucky enough at your guest to see you play in Whitley Bay down in the northeast, and had the good fortune to take my daughter down to see us there. Whitley Bay is not too dissimilar to Rothesay. There's kind of sense of kind of fading grandeur, but on the cusp of reinvention. Very, very interesting place. Now, another question is, you're of Irish ancestry through your father. Is that correct? Now, there's both
my mum and dad, and sadly no longer with us. Both from Southern Ireland. Yeah.
And there's some event coming up, isn't there, which is celebrating well-known musicians' connections to Ireland. Are you able to share that with us?
There's a guy called Colm Walsh, and he's really into bigging up County Kildare, in particular Athy. And he has been tracking down musicians that have associations with Kildare, and I think he's probably one of the big names is Johnny Marr from the Smiths. His dad, I don't know about his mother, but at least his dad came from County Kildare. And a couple of years ago, Colm arranged for Johnny to go over to visit, the old his dad's hometown. And they put up a plaque of some description, to commemorate the fact that, a descendant of Kildare went on to become this really well-known musician. And then looking, I know he's done a number of musicians, but the ones I'm talking about the Manchester Brigade, because there's a lot of Irish descendants in Manchester. And the other one he got was Manny from the Stone Roses. And then he sort of cottoned on to me. I thought he's probably digging a bit down towards the bottom of the barrel here. So but yes, my dad's from Castledermot in County Kildare, and they're actually doing a one-night photo exhibition on September the 17th. I think it's next week. And they did invite me to go over, but it was kind of all a little bit too last minute, and I couldn't do it because they wanted to try in some kind of tie in a musical element to it, like putting a plaque. I don't know whether someone would agree to put it on my dad's old house or whatever. So no, we've agreed that, at some point they'll get me back over to Castledermot, because I haven't actually been there since I was about 10 years old. So it'd be good to go back and see it again. Yeah,
no, that's fascinating. You made a joke the other day there about a super group with you, John Maher, and Manny. I think you should pursue that,
Yeah, the thing is, these super groups have a tendency not to come up with anything very interesting, do they? But I must admit, if Johnny Marr and Manny were up for it, I think I'd have to go for it.
Yeah, do it. Just the one gig.
But
you invite all us.
Yeah, it'd have to be in County Kildare, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, we'll organise a bus.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Well, that's been fantastic, John. I'm sure people have got lots more to ask, but we'll probably draw it to a close, if that's okay with you. I know you had other images that you could have shared from the United States, but let's do that another time, if that's okay with you. Yeah. So just like to thank everyone for joining. John mentioned Battersea there. You can see a lot of images related to Battersea in an exhibition that's on at Rockfield Centre in Oban at the moment by Paul Glazier. And that's work that he's been taking over the past few decades in his visits to the most southernly inhabited island, the Hebrides, Battersea. But do check the opening times before you do it. And as I say, Window Trail on Rossi, do catch it, but we hope that we can see the splendour of these fantastic large prints again in the not too distant future. While it was fantastic to see them like that, they do present a bit of a storage problem, I imagine. Yeah, prints of that size,
a bit of a millstone at times. Yeah,
but worth it. So
definitely.
Thank you again, John, for your time, your generosity and your cooperation. And everyone can join us again next week, where we'll be joined by Vary Law and Callum Angus Mackay, neighbours of yours, I suppose, from Harris. Lewis.
Yeah,
Lewis.
Just up the road, yeah.
Yeah. So do join us next week, same time, same place, and hopefully see you all then. Okay, bye.
All right, thank you. Bye.